just so the viewers know, the meeting was called to order prior to, and it's recorded, and we just got our video back.
So, Sydney, when they watch the video, can they see the slides?
Yes, in the corner, the back corner, so probably can't read it super well.
Sorry, our technological advances are a little slower.
It's okay. It's not a worry. I'm patient. Thanks, Laurie.
Thanks, Clerk.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'll pick up where I left off, and that is really just a discussion about how budget proposal adapts and evolves. Obviously, each department is required to submit their preliminary budget proposals for a fiscal year back in May. We get those to the county clerk, and then from May until now, the clerk is running numbers on her end and ultimately meeting with the various departments to identify what their needs are, and in particular, as it pertains to my office, sitting down, going through the various line items within the budget and identifying what the needs of the county are, trying to find a way to harmonize those with the needs of my office, and identifying if we can take any of the guesswork out of it for the commissioners and compromise on areas so that we can come to the commissioners and propose a budget that has as many of the kinks worked out of it as possible. And so that's the reason for the recent updates. That's the reason for Lori's office and my office working all the way until the end of the day yesterday, trying to collaborate on this and trying to narrow the scope of disagreement for you all as commissioners. So with that said, I'll dive into the presentation of my budget for FY26. First, for those that have sat through the budget presentation, you have probably heard me go through this before, but my obligation as legal counsel during the budget process as it pertains to my office is to allocate sufficient resources to effectively prosecute crime, advise department heads and elected officials, and defend the county in order to reduce the likelihood of liability, lawsuits, and claims which can have a significant financial impact on a public entity. I like to start every budget presentation just with a year in review, essentially telling you all as commissioners, over the last year, this is what my office has been up to. I think this is beneficial just to give you guys some insight into what we're doing, what our successes are, and what our struggles were. We'll start first with the highlights. During this last year, we were blessed to have a record number of law school internship applicants for our internship track in our office. And in particular this year, we had a piece of feedback that I thought was particularly important. So during the law school intern application process, we go around to various law schools. We have an opportunity to interview students, and as everyone in this room, I'm sure, can appreciate, no two employees are created equal, and in the context of interviewing law school students, no two law school students have the same abilities or intelligence. And so part of our process in going out and interviewing law school students is trying to identify who the brightest and smartest students are that we can try to recruit to come here and spend their summer with us. And one of the pieces of feedback we got this last summer during the interview process came from an interview of a student. We had asked this student, hey, looking at your resume, looking at your cover letter, I don't see any connections to North Idaho. I don't see any connections to Shoshone County or our office or prosecution otherwise. What motivated you to apply for an internship in our office? And this student's response was that their academic advisor at their law school had told that class of students that the internship in Shoshone County with our office would provide the single best learning opportunity and mentorship of any firm on their interview schedule. And so I think feedback like that was really neat. It was cool for us to hear, for those that have kind of followed our journey and our process of internships. It was neat to see our development of this farm system, the goal of saying, how can we start trying to recruit for the next pool of potential employees, 5 years, 10 years down the road? What does that look like? Identifying that internship programs is one of those ways of doing it, and then to see it have the success that it's been having, I think is really neat. And as a result, I hope everyone in this room has had an opportunity to interact with our interns at some point during the summer, and I hope that you've been able to identify and see that the students that we got placed in our office this summer fit that mold and were bright students and were able to contribute back to our public entity. Next highlight is actually stemming off of the last one, and that is our internship programs here in Shoshone have gotten quite a bit of publicity. And this last year I was actually asked to speak at a conference for government attorneys and try to teach other government offices how they can set up and establish and maintain an internship program. So pretty neat that Shoshone County is currently being looked at as kind of the model for how to do this and how to do it right. Next highlight dealt with our ongoing fight to obtain outside funding to offset certain costs within our budget. I've got my Chief Deputy Prosecutor in the room with me today, Ms. Jacobs. Her and her office manager, Flo Gunderson, do a phenomenal job of going out during the course of the year, seeking out different trainings and other opportunities where we can obtain funding to offset costs that would otherwise come out of our budget. I'm really pleased to be able to present once again that a portion of our trainings and our functions in our office were able to be supported by scholarship funds that we went out, wrote applications for, and obtained. Next highlight dealt with our highlight diversion program. Highlight diversion program this last year, as you may have seen in the news, saw its first group of graduates go through the program. Program is still fairly new, and so we'll continue collecting data. We'll continue trying to carry out the grant obligations under that program. But so far, our initial inclination is to really deem the program a success thus far. I think when you look at recidivism rates in other forms of diversion programs around the state, our ILEV diversion program is doing really well. Like I said, we obviously don't have a huge sample size yet, so I'm giving that disclaimer, but the initial response back so far has been that it's been really successful. So the last highlight is actually something that's kind of unique, kind of new for our office, and that is for the first time, I think maybe in my career as a prosecutor, I got to see a case come through our door where we investigated and are actively right now prosecuting an individual for operating a meth lab. Meth labs are things that were really common and popular 30, 40, 50 years ago. They since have fallen off the radar and they are not common at all anymore. And when we ran into one in Shoshone County this last year, we really had to pump the brakes. We had to bring in some experts to step in, advise, instruct, and in my opinion, successfully investigate. And now Ms. Jacobs is in the process of prosecuting that case, so it's about halfway through the system. I think it's currently set for jury trial this fall, but that's something that we had to navigate this last year that we have not had to in many years, and certainly since my tenure in the office. Just the same as it's important to look at the highlights, I think we also should recognize the adversities. In other words, what's holding us back, or what hurdles are we encountering in our ability to do our jobs. The first, which I am happy to reflect is going to be part of this presentation, is the vacancy in our civil deputy prosecutor position that has strained our office for so long was finally filled. And so we stumbled our way through most of the year. We had quite a few projects that have been backlogged as a result. And so I have to recognize that as being an adversity that my office faced. I think we're going to face a, I don't know. I don't know what caused that. We're back on. Okay. So in any event, now having that position filled, hopefully that doesn't have to show up as an adversity in future budget presentations. The next one is the state public defense system. So state public defense system rolled out technically last year, but it was in this budget cycle. And that state public defense system, it brought with it a whole wave of change. As part of that change, there are things that some would certainly say are benefits or advantages to a statewide public defense system. From our perspective as prosecutors, we've seen a huge increase in courtroom demands after that transition. We used to rarely encounter situations where we would have more than one jury trial in a month. Now we're encountering situations where we've got a jury trial per week in some instances. Those are the type of courtroom demands that we've seen crop up since the implementation of the statewide PD system. The number of contested hearings, contested preliminary hearings, contested motions to suppress, jury trials, etc. The type of cases that result in a large demand on an office is what we're seeing an increase of since that public defense implementation last year. The next one continues to be these complex civil litigation matters. This BOCC, I know, appreciates anytime we run into one of these complex civil issues. It involves a great deal of time and resources. We've seen a lot of these, and this last year was no different. We continued to run into these types of complex civil litigation, and certainly this last year, we spent a good deal of resources out of our office attempting to stay on top of those matters. The last one, which we'll touch on a little more here in slides to come, deal with the caseload numbers in certain particular areas. Most notably, we're looking at finishing this year, if our projections stay consistent, with a record number of search warrants and a record number of juvenile cases. So we're seeing some of these dockets just continue to climb. One of the components I try to touch on every year in my budget presentation is to just give you guys a candid perspective from my point of view as the elected prosecutor, to analyze my office and to look at where I think the health of my office is at. This is an important aspect because analyzing the health of your office gives insight into where your budget priorities should be, in my opinion. I historically have broken up this part of the analysis into a couple of categories. First, I try to separate out my different groups of employees. You'll notice, even though I have different types or tiers of legal assistants, I've just lumped them all together in one batch that under legal assistant, and then you'll see the rest of the positions within my office. Starting first with the workload, I just updated this slide, so if you looked at my presentation a few weeks ago that I had put together before we had finally filled our civil deputy spot, you would have seen our attorney positions in the red. I was happy to jump in here and update those and change them. And so workload-wise, if you ask me as it sits today, at this exact moment, I think we're doing okay. On the pay side of things, which we'll discuss more, looking at where I think other positions are at in the area in analogous offices, I think we're really strained in a couple of these areas, and I've highlighted those ones in red, and if I'm being candid about where I think the health of our office is, those are the areas that I think have the most strain. Looking first at the workload and walking you guys through where I think our workload is at presently, I'll run us through a handful of areas. First is the civil demands. I touched on this briefly, but this last year we had pending tort claims or allegations of potential tort claims that cropped up. We have 2 separate road validation cases that are moving their way through the system or have moved their way through the system during this last year. The county spent a good deal of time, whether it was the BOCC or other various departments that we assisted. They're seemed to be a big push this last year among various county officials to update and create new policies, and that certainly is something that is beneficial for a public entity to do. I note it here because it's one of those demands, and so it's important for us to just recognize that that's something that we did spend a good deal of time on this last year. Moving over to the criminal side, I've got some statistics here that I think are good for us to look at. First, this is our 5-year, year-on-year trend for caseloads. So this is total number of case filings within Shoshone County. This graph, I think there's a silver lining in it. You guys will notice that over the course of the preceding 4 years, we were on a steep incline. So we were seeing our caseload numbers each year increase pretty rapidly. And this last year, so 2024, we finally saw that number plateau. And so I've looked at where I think our projections will be for 2025. I think we might have a slight uptick again for FY25, but at least we've seen that rapid growth start to trail off a little bit. So that's a good sign, I think. One of the things that I often run into as I'm discussing things like caseload numbers out in the community, a common reaction from the general population tends to be, well, numbers are up everywhere, so it's not just Shoshone County. Well, this next overlay will actually show you that that's not the case. So the blue line is prorated numbers that actually show the total number of filings across the whole state. And you'll actually see that the state is on a 5-year downward trend. And so Shoshone County is an outlier in that regard. Shoshone County is seeing an increased caseload, whereas the rest of the state's actually seeing a 5-year decrease. This statistic, it might be the most alarming one, or I say alarming, it might be the most significant one in this whole presentation, and that is looking at the number of search warrants our office has had to process. I know that the VOCC and I worked together this last year in implementing our on-call policy, which I think helped us to keep up with this. But we had suspicions that this is where it was headed. When we were analyzing these numbers back in 2023, we were seeing increases that really were off the charts. I mean, we go from 9 search warrants in 2020 to 44 in 2023. That's an enormous increase. And so we saw the writing on the wall for these types of demands for increased requirements from the courts in order for us to process and address crime in the community, and requiring search warrants for law enforcement to be able to go in and search and seize things is something that we're seeing courts be more and more strict about. And that results in our office having to process more search warrants to effectuate the same job. Just for illustrative purposes, I went ahead and pulled the numbers at mid-year. So we pulled these numbers in July at the mid-year mark, and we used those mid-year mark numbers to generate a projection for 2025. What you guys are going to see there on the right side of the graph is what that projection is. So if we finish the year on the same pace we were at mid-year, we're going to exceed really any statistic I've ever seen for search warrants in this county. Certainly a far greater number than anything we've seen in recent years.
So what's your number right now? You said that was a projection.
So I ran these projections in July. We're now in August. I don't know, Brittany, do you have the ability to pull that up in Clio? I'll try to get it for you.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
I'll have Brittany pull the August number, which will be 1 month further from this one.
Okay. Thank you.
I think that's slightly slow. Where I'm at. Oh gosh. Oh, just August.
Well, if you give me the year number for 2025, that might give us
Are these
calendar years? It is calendar year. Yeah, so all the crime statistics run on a calendar year, and so it doesn't directly overlap, obviously, with our budget year, but it gives us some perspective on where our trends are at.
32 up to today's date. From 2025.
All right, so moving forward, another area of our caseload that we've seen a significant increase in, and as you're going to see from our projected numbers, calculated the same way, we're higher than we've ever been. And when you start looking at our 5-year trends, these aren't trends that are increasing at like inflation rates. These aren't trends that are increasing by 3% every year. These are trends that, in some instances, are 50% increases year over year. And so, looking at these numbers, we're going from, I think the 2020 number was like 12 or 13 juvenile cases. And now in just 5 years, we're projected to be over 50 juvenile cases for Shoshone County. Child protective cases, once again, a similar trend. You're going to see, that bar graph jumping up over the last 5 years. Our child protective cases are another area that oftentimes the public doesn't see. It's not in the public light, but it's absolutely one of our responsibilities statutorily to prosecute, and it's an important function for the safety of children in our community. So these are cases that do take a lot of our time, and these are cases that are coming through the door at a higher rate than we saw in the past. Revisiting this health of the office component, we just talked about workload. We'll shift over to the pay side of things. The pay side of things, and the reason why I want to point this out or highlight it is because there were some significant changes that happened in 2025, and these changes that we saw are going to greatly affect my office and my ability to hire and retain attorneys, I think, moving forward. First of those changes is we saw our state public defender come out at the start of legislative session, and particularly, as you'll notice in the headline, identified that there is a need to address public defense in order to be able to hire, retain attorneys in rural counties. So his emphasis or his priority was the rural counties in Idaho. We saw the governor respond to that by proposing an increase in the state public defense budget. That increase was negotiated back and forth and ultimately was adopted by our legislature. And we see the end result is that our public defenders got a significant pay bump that started on June 1. And so our public defenders across the state got to see significant salary increases this year, which caused a pretty big shift in employment emphasis. To add on to that is the domino effect that once you start increasing pay for one area in a professional service, the others have to follow to keep up. And we saw this with judges too. So piggybacking on that same legislative session, we then saw the legislature address the judges' pay. As you'll see from this graph, the judges in Idaho got a $17,000 pay raise this year. And now our magistrate judge in Shoshone County is going to make $164,000, and our district judge is going to be up to $172,000. Historically, one of the conversation points or arguments that certain individuals have tried to point out is, well, let's not compare Shoshone County to these larger jurisdictions. Let's find comparables for Shoshone County that are related to us. With the implementation of the state public defense system, public defenders are now district-based, and so the public defenders in the first district are serving the various counties around the first district. And although it's not directly comparing apples to apples, because in my county structure, I essentially have 3 tiers of attorneys. I have my elected prosecutor who's in charge of the office. I've got chief deputy prosecutors. Chief deputies are going to be the ones that are supervising the deputies, and then everyone below that's going to be a non-supervising attorney or a deputy prosecutor. On the public defense side, they've got, I think, like 5 tiers in the head of the office, and so the district public defender is essentially the equivalent of the elected prosecutor. They have supervising attorneys, which they categorize, or which I've categorized as trial 4 attorneys or higher, and then they have their entry-level attorneys, which are trial 3 and lower. And so trying to draw some comparisons so we can compare apples to apples in this data set, you'll see where I put up on the screen where I think our positions fall as it relates to my prosecutors, same counterparts that are just serving the defense side for indigents in our county. What I think is particularly telling about these numbers, and it's not evident in this graphic, but I think it's pertinent for us to talk about, is the fact that our state public defense system has recognized that, contrary to popular belief, it's been extremely difficult for them to get these attorneys to be willing to go out into the rural jurisdictions. Because of that, right now, Shoshone County is not being serviced with an entry-level attorney. In fact, when my chief deputy goes into the courtroom, like she was in just earlier this afternoon, she's going in there as a chief deputy prosecutor with a salary you see on the board, and the person sitting across the table from her, so the public defender serving Shoshone County right now is the district PD. So the person across the table from her is making $155,000 for the same exact case, both in public service. If I were to come to the BOCC and I were to throw out comparisons of saying, okay, let's try to get the attorneys in our office to be paid the equivalent of what other prosecutors are paying, I'm setting that argument aside. If we just look at what public defenders in our district are making, and we were to draw equity, this is what our graph would look like. I point this out to say, if you all noticed from the budget recommendations that I've put in front of the BOCC, all I am asking for is that we at least meet that entry level pay for public defenders. This goes without saying that chief deputy and myself as the elected, that if we could just get us to this number where the entry level attorneys are out on the public defense side, we'll worry about pay equity for a chief deputy or an elected later. My goal is just saying, hey, how can we just get the baseline of my office where the entry level positions are on the other side of the table? To reach this, as you guys may have been able to dissect from the budget, and this I'll point out because I think this is a bit of a nuance for Shoshone County. The numbers that I'm using for my budget presentation include both the base pay for my attorneys and the contemplated pay they would receive from serving in on-call rotations. If we didn't incorporate that, which to my knowledge, most of the counties throughout the state of Idaho that have on-call rotations, they don't count that in their attorney salaries. So the attorney is going to have a base salary, and then their on-call rotation is above and beyond. Our base salary in Shoshone is actually $87,000. I point that out just to say the numbers I've used on the last graphic, as we go through this graphic, were not the 87. I'm rounding that number up and incorporating within it the on-call rotation. If we look at that on-call rotation being incorporated within it to get us to the 102 where the entry-level public defenders are at, we would be taking our base pay, bumping it up to 95, and taking the proportion of the on-call and bumping it to 7. That would keep both of those proportional, and it would also help to keep the balance and equality, as well as the incentive for the attorneys in the office to be willing to serve in that rotation. How this compares, once again, the person currently serving as the public defender in Shoshone County, that's what they're making. Other attorneys throughout the first district, the supervisors are at 137, and their tier 3 and lowers average out to be 102. I want to point this graphic out just as my plea to the BOCC to demonstrate that really what I'm asking for does not take into account my own position. If we look at where I'm sitting as an elected prosecutor compared to the other counties in the state, this is our graphic. At the bottom of this graphic, you're going to see where Shoshone County has me at. And once again, that 93 number takes into account the on-call rotation, not just the base salary. To my knowledge, all of the other numbers that are used throughout the state for base salary don't incorporate any on-call service. When my office originally restructured our salary rates and averaged all of our attorneys in an attempt to get our entry-level deputy positions up so we could get them filled, that originally put my chief deputy, put her in the bottom third, but at least she wasn't at the very bottom. As you can see from this graphic, the rate of increase for other attorneys in other counties around the state have increased such that Now, as we sit here after this last year, my chief deputy is now near the bottom. And if we parse this out further, you're going to see out of those counties below us, although I can't speak for Bannock County, I can speak for Benoit and Boise. They're reporting these positions as a chief deputy, but they only have 2 attorneys in their office. So realistically, that's not a chief deputy. That's an entry-level deputy position for both of those small counties because they're not a supervising attorney. So I put them in the graphic just because these are the numbers that are reported to the state, but I'm pointing it out just to demonstrate that in our office, our chief deputy is starting to fall further and further behind the rest of the chiefs around the state. This last graphic that talks about pay is designed to analyze what cases or what counties around the state share a similar case comparison to Shoshone. So one of the biggest equalizers in analyzing the amount of work that comes through the door in a prosecuting attorney's office doesn't deal with population, it deals with caseload. So when we look at criminal caseload, this deals with misdemeanors and felonies. And we say, okay, how many misdemeanors and felonies do various counties have around the state? We find where Shoshone is at, and then for purposes of this graphic, what I do is I take the 5 above us and the 5 below us. So that's what you all have here. These are the 10 counties that are around us. These are the 5 that are immediately above us and the 5 immediately below us, and they're sorted in descending order based upon caseload, which puts us right in the middle. Now, if we take these same counties and we draw out what the prosecutor pay is for those, you see we're actually at the bottom. And even if this BOCC were to grant my budget request and at least get us up to the 102 number, we would still be at the bottom. Maybe not as far at the bottom, but we're still at the bottom. With all of that, I'll circle back to the budget worksheet that you guys have, and suffice it to say that through effort of the clerk, working with our office, I think we've ironed out most of the discrepancies between my recommended numbers and the clerk's. That leaves us with just a couple of lingering ones. This sheet is the one you guys have, or I believe you all have in your packets, and there's a number of these things that happy to say hopefully aren't applicable and we don't even have to discuss. Requests number 1 through 4 all deal with the pay of those prosecuting attorneys in my office. I don't want to belabor it anymore, so I won't discuss it further. Number 5 just deals with that bump that we would see for the on-call rotation that would be necessary in order to incorporate in if we're going to include that as part of how we're analyzing pay. Request number 6. So you guys are going to see this identified as line item 408-02. So request number 6 on the left was the $15,000 that we originally plugged in order to say if we were at full staff and we wanted to keep our internship programs running and operating, this is how much we would need in there. Through negotiations with the clerk, I've agreed to just nix this. So that request for that $15,000 in that line item is going to be removed. I won't be requesting that. Number 7 is an adjustment that's based on actual grant income. So this isn't any additional expense to BOCC. We were notified that one of our grants is going to allocate additional funds for us to incorporate within our budget. And so you're going to see that line item in 408-10 go from $5,000 to $7,200, and that's the actual amount the grant will receive. So no adjustment needed from you there. Request number 8 is just a slight bump, and that's the line item that we've been drawing down from when the BOCC has had complex litigation matters that we've wanted expert counsel on. One of those matters was a matter of road litigation, and as you all saw, the price tag to pay an outside attorney to come in and advise the county on a matter of that complexity far exceeds that number. However, just understanding that, that could be a request, and the BOCC may not have money in their budget when they have those requests. The prosecutor may have surplus in his budget. We may be able to pull from it, and in the event we do, we added just a little bit more cushion in that line item. Request number 9 is a cost of service increase. It's a small bump. It's $500, so it brings us from 14.5 to 15, and that's based upon the subscription numbers that I've received for the upcoming subscriptions for this next year for our legal research platforms. Request number 10 and request number 11, once again, are really not requests. It's just a matter of flip-flopping two line items. I believe they had been miscategorized in a previous year, and so we're just fixing that, readjusting those to flip-flop those two line items. So I hope with all of that presentation said, I hope that really minimizes the amount of analyzing you as a BOCC have to do as it pertains to my budget. And with that, I'd be happy to stand for any questions, comments, or inquiries that you as a commission have.
Can I get a copy of that? The one of the slides, like the 5-year comparison with the caseload?
Yep, you bet.
You know, one of the problems that we're facing every year in Shoshone County is our tax levies. It's, you know, we don't have the money, and even if we levied the taxes, and that's one of the problems that we're facing right now is trying to go out and find other revenue, and just with our increasing our, let's say we increased our levy for this year, how much taxes would we get?
165
160
from the taxpayers.
from the taxpayers. $165,000 is what we get, and that's for the general fund only. Or is that,
That's all.
No,
that's all.
That's
So that's
every-
$165,000. All that, if we raise our levy, that's all that would come in for the general fund and the sheriff's office. And so we really need to figure out how we're going to increase our revenue other than taxes, because that's a small bump. $165,000 to cover fuel costs. So that's one of the problems we're facing, and hopefully legislation is going to come in with, they talked about revenue sharing with a sales tax, but that hasn't happened yet. So I understand where you guys are coming from, and you are a lot lower than the rest of the city on salaries.
And your requests are absolutely reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
The solution is going to be a bit of a challenge, but the request makes sense. And just to make sure I'm clear, on line item 5, that bump from 23 to 28 is to allow us to continue, that will get us to the salaries and the totals that we talked about.
Correct. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I have another question, if I can find it. What is the new hires line item 04030019?
So it's my understanding from chatting with the clerk that that line item was inputted there based on a request from the BOCC that any time we contemplate an employee retiring and being replaced with a new employee that will take that retiree spot, that the new employee have their wages actually pulled out of the general line for the rest of the staff and put into their own category. So you can see that that's the amount of wages that will be given to the new employee who will come on theoretically mid-year. My office has one of those situations. I've been informed. Luckily, one of my employees, came to me well in advance and said, "Hey, I want to give you a full heads up. This will be my retiring date," which is something I've asked of my employees. Fortunately, this employee was willing to do that. So now we've got a target date we can plan for, and then it allows us to budget around that target date.
Thank you.
Lori, did I explain that correct? Okay.
So the lady who is retiring, her wages are up in 403 for the year, for the months that she's going to be here. And then the new employee has its new line, so you can see that's where it's coming from. You had requested that last year to see new line items, so I stuck with that.
And that's why the 0403 is decreasing. Is that
For
the salaries for legal assistants and that?
a little bit, yes, but it is decreasing also because we took nearly 21,570 out of that, because one of their employee gets paid that 21,570 from a grant. So we pulled it out of that, out of their regular line item, because you can't be paid twice.
Put it into
So-
the their one.
Yes.
Okay.
Same with 404. That is the majority of that person's wage, that new deputy prosecutor, but 30,000 up above in 40317 is also going to pay him. Or her. I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's a he. Yeah. So the 30,000 that's in 40317 is that portion of the salary that's specifically paid using grant funds.
And you'll see when you look in your books, your original ones that I gave you, I had 0 on all those. Because I thought if we did, but he has hired somebody.
Okay.
So then I went ahead and added them in. The only other change is the 4044 ILIT grant wages for $10,000. We have it at 0. That ILED expires in June of 26. So we took it off the revenue. We will take it off the revenue. I will take it off the revenue, and we did not put it in here because we just don't know what you're going to use prior to June.
But there would be some, because we're going to collect through June.
Yes, you would. But it's not as much as you think. It like right now I think we're at $5,000. I think is what it has paid out. Does that sound about right?
I don't have the numbers.
Yeah, you know what?
off the top of my head, but
I don't either. So maybe I shouldn't speak on it because I'm not 100%. But yeah, whatever the ILIT grant could pay and would pay, we would definitely use it. But it's not going to be enough to go, ooh, that saved the day.
Yeah.
So we just
And
took
it
it out.
wouldn't be conducive for the following year.
No, it's not.
And we also didn't include the 3% that was requested us to include in our numbers.
Okay, no, you didn't?
We did not.
no, there's no 3%.
There's no 3% in our legal staff. We just went with exactly what it's going to be, or what it was. So we did not include the 3%.
Did you know that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, we work on these numbers together.
And we 04300026 stop grant expenses. Why the zeroing out there? Again, the grant disappears?
Actually, because I think when it was set up, there had been thought that there would be expenses for it. But there has not been, because that money is in the grant fund, in its own fund. So anytime in that fund, they've got their training, and then they have they're allotted so much money for supplies, and they, so instead of funneling it through 1/7, they directly hit and submit the paperwork for just the grant. So correct.
And so do they increase, do they put this budget amount further down?
No, because it doesn't, nothing's coming out of general fund for stock grant expense.
It's just coming straight from the fund.
Just coming straight
Yep.
from the grant
Yep.
fund.
Yep.
It's not being funneled. And I think originally that's what it was, was
So
designed
it's not
to
in the
do.
budget.
No,
It's outside the budget.
It
because
is.
It's a fund, yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
right,
Because if it was in the budget, it would be part of the.
yes,
Right.
Okay.
And then we would include that as income, and we did not.
yeah.
We just included the wages in the income.
Okay.
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 So that
makes
total,
sense back here.
that total grant is about 77,000.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's why we have that little change back.
Yes.
Back in the-
And then
Revenue.
58 of that, or nearly 59,000 of that 77 is designated for
Grants.
different, for wages in different areas.
Mhm.
So we did put those into here. And that equals the 30,000, the 21,700, the 21,570, and
The 7289.
and then the 7289. So we put that money in. So it would be 30,000 salary stop grant 40317, then 40318, the victim witness coordinator,
Okay,
and then also 40810 overtime stop grant. So those three equal that 58,000.
And that was put in revenue.
I put the 58,000 in revenue, not the 77, because the rest of that grant money went into the grant fund so that they can use it for, because they do their trainings in that, they do certain supplies or what they need out of there. I think there's some maybe some travel and food or
Operating
something.
travel.
Yeah, something of
Operating
that.
and travel is
Okay.
pretty much how they require us to spread
Right.
that out. The state.
okay.
And then Flow quarterly then has to, she tracks all of that, and then she has to submit all of that paperwork to the grant.
Mhm.
And then they either approve it or deny it, and it's always been approved.
Okay. And then they just pay us back.
Right.
Okay. I see you put it on 58,859 wages.
Yeah. Wages only.
Just a clarification on new equipment, computers and scanners, 0800 0000. It looks like we overspent this year, but are we agreed that 2,500 should cover it next year?
So what I historically do with that line and a couple other lines, like computer operations is one of those lines too. I budget what I think the absolute bare minimum is. And I understand that what I'm budgeting for isn't sustainable long term. So at some point I'm going to have to go over that budget, and I don't go over that budget until I get to the end of the budget year and I realize that I've got enough cushion in my budget that I can afford to go over in that year. If we were in a year where we didn't have excess left over from some other area that was underspent, I'd hold that line and I would just know that I've got certain items that are depreciating and I'll just need to play catch up in subsequent years.
And it does look like you're under budget this year at this point, is that correct?
I should be, yeah.
Thank you. That's appreciated.
We do what we can.
You'll see that like on 440-10, there's like the trial prep and then 447 homicide. We left those at the 5,000 mark instead of taking it down, with the understanding if it doesn't get used, that then we'll then roll it over for the next year. But you just, trial prep can get expensive.
We should just outlaw homicides.
Right?
There you go.
That would save
Novel idea.
a lot of pain, a lot of money.
And you'll notice on like 461, that dropped dramatically, the telephone. So, I mean, there were some things that we were able to get down a little bit.
You know, and as Lori alluded to, some of these funds are really insurance policies. I know we discussed that at length, I think, during last year's budget presentation. Or homicide line item is one of those. Our goal is, our hope is that we get to the end of the budget year and we didn't touch any of that money. That's our goal. That money is there really as our insurance fund to say, hey, if we do get hit with one of these things, we understand, for instance, if we were hit with a homicide case that went to trial, I anticipate we'll blow far past that $5,000 mark, but at least we have something in there to kind of absorb the blow a little bit before we start digging into other areas of the budget. So all that to say, you know, I mean, if you as a commission say, hey, we really want to make some of these other line items work and these requests work, you know, is there any way we can shave down some of that insurance policy? You can, but it's there as a just in case. It's there in case we get one of those types of cases that come through the door. So, you know, if you guys were wanting to shave those down to make up the room to accommodate other budget requests, we could. We would just need to know that we've reduced that insurance policy by, you know, whatever the percentage is you decide.
And then something like professional services could go way over budget again and we have no insurance anywhere else. There's so many unpredictables.
You know, with a prosecutor's
In every
budget,
budget.
you're really going to see some of those highlighted, right? You're going to see items that were carved into our budget that we may not touch at all during the year, and then you'll see another year, you know, where you're the next Latah County, and you know, you've got a budget that's of the tens of millions of dollars on one single case. So.
They did go dramatically down on 408 overtime. They really gave on that one. And they even gave up, and they're gonna be pinching pennies. But they deserve to be recognized for it. Their training, they even took, or travel, one of them, they took $1,000 off of it too. I guess that was 439. So by us meeting in the room, we were really able to like go through and just trim anything that we possibly could.
Yeah.
And does this budget account for the new hire, the fourth person being full-time?
Yeah, you'll see that reflected there. So that's in line 404-0. You'll see that wage, if you add in the stop grant amount that contributes to it, that'll reflect a full-time wage.
Okay. That is the fourth person.
So basically with the increases between the budget officer and the department, it's about 44,000.
Well, actually, it's a
minus
little
6,000.
more than that.
If you just take the salary, the benefits, salary and benefit.
Like, if you see on there, after our meeting yesterday, on the 40319 new hires,
Mhm.
we agreed that it needed to go into both spots. We wanted to be able to reflect each other. And when I did it, I forgot to put it in. So that was my mistake. So we caught that, and that's why it's handwritten in. So with that change, that gives his department total of $973,953. Right? Can I get a calculator? Or very near that.
Pretty close.
And then of course I'm lower, but I
don't know if we recalculated the benefits that are gonna be,
the benefits are all going to be crazy anyways, because these benefits did not reflect the new SIF. Is that what the state insurance?
yeah,
Yeah, 'cause it's-
So all of these, they're going to go up anyways.
yeah. So if you
Because
If you all look at the section D, the benefits, you're gonna see where the department request and budget officer request, they don't match at all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's what makes it really difficult to look at the bottom line and
Right.
use those numbers at all.
right.
So the budget officer left it the same.
I did. Yes. But now,
I also
I
don't
did
think the
leave
VIVA payment's reflected either, so that's another difference in the column.
yeah, on 413-2 Viva,
And why is that?
I took them out.
Mm-hmm.
I trying to save the county some $85,000.
So you're taking the beef out of all?
I took him out. Yes, I took them out of everybody's. If you want them back in, it's just the departments are budgeting for them. I just was trying to get a comparison of
Where you could cut to
where
save
we
some
could
money.
where we could cut to save some money, because the insurance has gone up another 4%, which is another $94,000.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just took a hit in with the administration fees and roads for
Yes.
Yeah.
$300,000.
Yes.
So we're off on our general.
Yes.
And we'll have all that. We're going to talk about that Thursday.
You
Did we
tell
set
me
that up?
whatever you want to know.
For which one?
Do I set up anything for Thursday? This Thursday, kind of like. No, we can't now.
We have an empty calendar Thursday. I mean, I have meetings, but nothing set with the board.
We did Thursday afternoon.
Thursday. We can't because it's Tuesday. It's 48-hour notice.
We did it at 4.
4:30.
To do what?
Well, I think what we need to do is we need to come in and get a health of the county, kind of where we're at. Because right now, just by having the roads department come in and doing their budget hearing, that the general fund is already gonna be short $350,000. Because that was taken out. And
And
that's
then we have all the
income.
increases,
And then we have the increase in
health and health
our health
insurance.
insurance. So we really need to see where we're at. So we can start making our decisions more,
I think that's what I was asking. What would be the goal of the Thursday meeting?
that would be the goal.
That would be the goal.
So do you want to do that for 4:30 on Thursday?
Sure. We need to be out of here by 4:20 for me to amend.
Mr. Prosecutor, can you think of anything that we're not asking that you thought we maybe would or should?
I don't think so. The clerk's office and my office worked really hard to try to narrow down your decisions for you and streamline this so that way we didn't spend a day in this room, picking apart things. So we tried to narrow the scope.
And then we'll get answers on what you go from there. Do we have any other questions or concerns? Any public questions?
Yeah, the 403, is the interns come out of that line item?
No, they don't.
They don't? Which
They
one?
come out of
408-02, I believe,
Yep.
is where Lori had pulled them from this year.
Yep.
Salary temp.
Okay, the other one is just a statement on the fourth prosecutor, because we all know this is a big issue right now. Is this gonna help on blight problems of moving forward, having a fourth prosecutor? Blights don't seem to go anyplace. Last one is the public defenders, are they state employees? Or are they contractors?
The state has both setups, so they have their full-time state public defenders. Those are sectioned out district-wide. And then the state public defense system has a separate track that they use for conflict attorneys, and those are hourly attorneys. And those attorneys, I think the new hourly rate, they got a $25 an hour pay bump as well. So I think they're up to $125 an hour now.
The 102,000, was that contractors or was that,
No, that's their full-time employees.
they are getting benefits?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That's all I,
Any other further questions from the board?
Not.
Thank you for the information. Thank you, and
Yeah.
thank you for coming in,
Thank you
and
for
thank you for doing this. And we'll have to,
And working with the clerk.
yep, thank you.
Yeah, you bet. It was a pleasure. It was
Yeah.
Lori was great to work with this year, and yeah, I think that's how it should be. So.
Okay. There's no further questions? Meeting adjourned.